Movement, human movement. That's what this mix of genes in my family and throughout the human family tells us about ourselves. We are a species on the move, whether escaping hardship or seeking opportunity.
This is something I wanted to do my whole life. Come to Turkey and visit where all the grandparents came from. I know that they never liked looking back, and they never really wanted to come back here themselves, nor did they want to talk about it. But it's up to us, of the succeeding generations, to reconstruct what happened and understand why they were who they were because of the experience they had in living in Turkey.
This Aegean coastal town, Ayvalik, Turkey, is where my paternal grandfather, James Matthews, grew up. Of all our 4 grandparents, all ethnic Greeks, born in Western Asia Minor, Papu James was the one who left us with the most information about the life he left behind.
This is an amazing town. It's a lot of old buildings. There's Greek inscriptions everywhere. There's architectural flourishes that are obviously all Greek.
Despite being Turkish, Ayvalik's past is very Greek. The city was formerly known as Ayvali. The legend goes that in the late 1700s, a Greek priest from Ayvali aided Turkish Navy sailors lost off the coast. Later, when their captain became a powerful official, he granted the Greek population of Ayvali special status. The city became a Greek cultural center, with a Greek Christian population of 35,000. This is where Papu James grew up in the early 1900s.
I can imagine the family restaurant and barber shop and gambling casino that they had here behind the police station where they lived. And that's what we're going to find tomorrow.
Well, the house was up on a hill, and down underneath at the lower part, there were stables, and they had the animals there, like the donkey. And he said when we'd want to go out, we'd say, "Pop, can I take the donkey?"
Thanks to my father's sister, Celia, we have the stories Papu James told and a map, hand-drawn, based on his descriptions of the city.
Oh. So that was interesting. Oh, here's the map. A couple of maps here. Waterfront trees. Oh, father's neighborhood and stores.
They were a prosperous family. They had orange groves and olive groves.
It's a very wealthy little town on the coast of Anatolia, opposite the Greek islands. And its wealth comes mainly from its beautiful olive trees. They have wonderful olives there. Most of those olives were owned by Greeks until 1923, and then they left and Turkish people took over.
The Turks took over after a long struggle of Muslim against Christian. My grandfather grew up with Balkan Muslims attacking his town.
Leading up to when they left, there were Muslims who had been in Russia, who had been in the Balkans, who were expelled from those areas as the Ottoman Empire shrank. These people were forced back into into Anatolia, and a lot of them were horsemen, and they would be raiders.
It was very difficult to be a Greek in Turkish surroundings.
My aunt told me the story of how my grandfather had a new pair of shoes coming home from church one day, and the call came out that the raiders were coming on their horses with their big swords, and they were, trying to kill anybody they could kill. So all the Greeks ran to their homes to shutter their doors and their windows and stick their guns out the little slits and fight them off. And so our grandfather had to run home, and he was afraid he would hurt his shoes, which of course he ruined his shoes, but he got home safely. So.
And he knew that when he was 18 that they would draft him into the Turkish army, and he would be, if a war came, he would be killing his own people.
Being on this K here, I'm imagining myself being Papu James and saying, okay, I got to get out of here. Here's a little rowboat. I mean, I can't imagine with this wind that I could ever make it even to Konda, much less all the way to Mytilene.
And it was getting harder and harder, which helped him make the decision to leave.
Probably was a pretty strong guy, but I mean, he'd have to row all night to make it all the way across. How fast can you row? 1 mile an hour, 2 miles an hour, and it's 15 miles. It just boggles the imagination that he could have done something like that. Now that I'm here and I look at it, the story now seems really amazing.
James made it to the United States and began a new life. Meanwhile, as Germany prepared for war, the Ottoman Turkish government became Germany's ally. In 1918, when Germany lost the war, the Ottoman Turks lost too.
At the end of World War I, Greece was given, as part of the peace agreement, a portion of modern-day Turkey. Greeks then moved their army in there to enforce the peace agreement.
The Greek-Turkish War in 1919 to 1922 was a savage war.
Greeks found themselves against the Turks that were helped by Russians and Italians, and it became a large war that went on for a couple of years, and the Greeks lost.
Turkish history perceived the war between Greece and Turkey in the late 1910s and early 20s as the War of Independence, whereas the outcome of this war for the Greek history is a catastrophe.
Everyone left except for the mother, our great-grandmother. She refused to leave. She stayed behind. My grandfather was getting food to her by a courier, a young Turkish boy, and this boy was sneaking food into her during the siege. She lived in the basement of the house until the boy was discovered. My grandfather couldn't get any more food through to her and never heard anything more. These houses here, they have been sitting here for about 80 years untouched. And just in the last 5 years, there have been a reconstruction going on. They've been keeping the old structures and bringing them up to modern code, and people live in them now. Before this reconstruction finishes, we were hoping to find where the Matthews house is. And we have a pretty good idea that this building behind me, this house, is most likely the home that we're looking for.
Bu evlerin Ayvalık'ta çoğunlukta bulunması, yani yoğun bulunması Ayvalık'ın bütünlüğüne çok güzel bir etki bırakıyor. Ayvalık özgün bir kent, kendisine özgü bir kent.
Mujat Soylu collects historical Ayvalik photographs and illustrations. By digitizing and sharing these images, he sparks a wide interest in his city.
Bütün dünyanın yaptığı gibi, bugün İtalya'nın bunu çok güzel yaptığı gibi, İspanya'nın bunu çok güzel yaptığı gibi ellerindeki eserleri, değerleri gerek pazarlama, gerek bundan somut, nesnel, maddi gelirler elde etme açısında olduğu gibi Ayvalık'ın da bunu yapması çok akıllıca olur. Ayvalık içerisinde yaşayan halkıyla birlikte, içerisinde yaşayan insanlarla birlikte, bir organizma gibi düşündüğünüz zaman şehirle birlikte yaşayan bu şehir kendisini çok iyi tanıtabilir dünyaya, ilgi çekebilir, misafir çekebilir.
But as tourists admire the beautiful restorations, they're bound to ask, why did the original Greek families leave?
1919'da Yunanlılar bir oyun oynadılar. 1923'te game over oldu. O oyun onlar için bitti. Bunu böyle kabul etsinler. O şekilde bir oyun oynadılar, kaybettiler. Tamam, bitmiştir artık. Şimdi gelecekte, mutlu bir gelecekte beraber yaşayalım.
So something like 2 million, 3 million Greeks had to leave what's modern Turkey, and there were some Turks that were in Greece that moved back to Turkey.
Oliane is a Muslim born in Crete. His family was part of the exchange in 1924. They moved to Alabi, the town next to Ayvalik.
Ben bir tarihçi gibi konuşuyorum. Yok. Yunanlar benim dostum. Neden Kemal Paşa değişim üzerinde ısrar etti? Neden? Çünkü yerli halk, yerli Hristiyan o kadar kötülükler yaptılar ki yerli halka, ondan sonra onları gemlemesi mümkün değildi. Durdurtması mümkün değildi. ve bir felaket doğacağına mübadeleyi o da destekledi ondan sonra.
The teaching of history in Turkey at the elementary and secondary levels is pretty pedestrian. They don't acknowledge much about this the way we don't say much about what we've done to the American Indians or black communities, for instance, in this country. Luckily, that's changing in both places. But in the universities and at higher education, there is a growing knowledge of and attention to this very complex Ottoman Empire and the richness that it had from its various constituents.
Connecting Ayvalik with its Greek past brings meaning to the historic preservation, just as for my brother and I, connecting with Ayvalik brings meaning to our understanding of our family and ourselves. In Ayvalik, we discovered many cultural touchstones that bring us closer to our heritage.
People do terrible things to each other, unfortunately. But I'm glad to say that in recent decades, the Greeks and the Turks are trying to reconcile, but getting over centuries of misunderstanding and conflict is not easy.
Gelecekte, güzel gelecekte, umutlu gelecekte birlikte yaşamanın ve bunu tarihte biz çok becerdik. Çok başardık bunu tarihte. Gelecekte de bunu yapmamamız için bir sebep yok.